We finished assembling our latest trainer, and while it looks really good, I want to highlight some things that we could do better. Now, we probably should do a video at some point about how to evaluate things at the end of a project because sometimes we need to fix something. Sometimes we just need to do better the next time. And in this case, we need to take the time to fix this because we have a pinch point on our cables right here. So this control panel actually mounts underneath the machine. And since this is a training piece of equipment, I know half the time we're on our knees when we're working on equipment, but I didn't want the technicians to have to do that. So the cabinet actually can roll out and we can get 8 people around it and talk about things. And when this comes back, it's supposed to close all the way up. But I have these cables here that are in the way. Now, there are a lot of different ways we could deal with this. If you recall on our machine trainer, its contact CES connector did a great job at cable management in this, but our movement was minimal. We were really only twisting these wires 90 degrees, and they weren't twisting that often. Another way is just to have a lot of tie wraps. Here, this 3D printer has enough movement that it looks like it's okay, but notice even when you run it all the way up, it starts to rub. And that would be an issue if we were running this up top a lot. Now, in the case of this one, there is just too much motion to actually handle this. I've tried tying this up. I've tried even doing some crude springs, and it didn't look really good, and it still occasionally would pitch. So we're going to use some Igus energy chain to manage this cable movement much better. If you've never seen energy chain before, it is pretty much a piece of chain that typically rotates one direction, but also they have S configurations and all types of options. And what we'll do is we'll mount one side on our panel and the other side up on our frame. And that way, as the panel goes out, it'll hold that cable up. And as it rolls back, it'll slide back and keep it from pinching on that spot. Now, I do have to thank Igus for helping me out with this, and I strongly urge you to submit your application to them or your local rep when you're trying to figure out. Because, yeah, I knew I needed a piece of chain. I didn't think about, I actually need mounts to actually anchor this to our panel. We also need some cable clips that we're going to learn about a little later. You also may need some cable dividers, and very important, there are different types of chain. Some of them you have to feed the wires through, and some of them you can actually reach in here with a screwdriver and you can pop these covers off. And that's what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop all these covers off. It'll be a little more time consuming, but I already have all this wired. We've already done all our startups. So my options are either use one that has the removable covers, or I have to unwire this whole panel. I'm going to go ahead and take the rest of these covers off. Now the top cover's off, I'll be able to place this in here, figure out my mount, and then put the covers back on. Now, a little bit about the cable management and talking about what do we got to do for this project, what do we have to do for the next project is if I was building this fresh, I actually would put the chain here on the left side where I could get a little more room and mainly it wouldn't have to stick out of the back. But unfortunately, if I did that, all my cables would be too short since I've already cut them. So for this one, I am going to mount it right here, have it come up. It'll stick out a little bit in the back. But on my next one, 100%, I would call Igus first, figure out exactly how to do my cable management, and work my cables from there. Before I bolt this on, I just want to highlight the thought that a good energy chain company such as Igus puts into theirs compared to, we'll say, some of the brand X's. I really like how universal this piece is because it has bolt holes in the bottom and in the side and in the top. So we have lots of options of how to mount this. I'm getting ready to put this underneath this rail and I'm going to hardly be able to get to anything since there's a hole right here, I can take my Allen wrench right through there and then I'll be able to tighten up my screw. So I'm going to mark some holes, drill them, and get this bolted. Now I'm going to push the cabinet as far out as it'll go. I can figure out exactly how much chain I do need. Then I'll snap it on one end. A little bit close up of what you're actually doing is I went ahead and took this apart, and you can kind of see how these two sides join, but watch out for these locators. And yeah, all you do is slide it in, and you'll hear a snap, and that'll be it. Now we can figure out the exact length we need here. And that one's going to be too short, so I'm going to go to this link and pop it out. And the easiest way is actually go ahead and pop these center members out of each one, because then these can pop right apart. It takes a little bit more time, but that's the easiest way I've found. And now I can snap these in. Then I'm going to pop just that last one in just to hold it in place. And let's see how it rolls. I'm not even going to worry about putting the cables in yet. Start sliding back, and we see it picks it up there. And that will come back really nicely. What are you cracking for? All right, that little bit of popping was I was putting too much strain on this joint right at the end. And I went back and looked at my notes, and yeah, I had assembled it differently than Igus had told me to. So now we're going to try to slide it back and see how it does. It's coming back nicely. And whoop, let me get the wire out of the way. That way we can see if it actually comes all the way back. Oh, and that's just really nice. So now let's go ahead, push it back out. It's probably the easiest. Right here. And then we need to put our cable into it. And I'm going to start to route my cables through. I had this Velcro on temporarily while I was trying to work everything else out. So pop my Velcro off, that'll let it lay in here nice and flat. And to keep them from falling out while I'm routing the rest of it, I'm going to go ahead and put one on right here. And to put it back on, all you got to do is pop them back in like that. And then we'll slide it in. And I'll take my Velcro off as I go. And for now, I'm just going to put a few of them in. I'll come back and put the rest of them in after I get everything routed correctly. Now when I push it out, the chain is holding it up really nicely. And I bring it in, and there is no pinch points now. That looks a lot more professional than my Velcro and all of my contraptions that I tried to hold it up with. And this is a good example of where if we spend a little bit more money, our customers going to be a lot happier. There were some other issues that you folks brought up, and some of them we are going to address in future videos. And some of them, we just want to talk about how we've got to be able to take the criticism and just apply it to the next job. And I've created this playlist right here with a lot of those helpful tips.